We have a special guest on today's podcast as the play-by-play voice for the Rome Braves. Kevin Karel joins the show. We'll talk about some of the best prospects he's seen come through Rome, including those currently in the Braves system. Should be a fun episode on Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
Hey, this is Stacey Gotsoulias,
DC Lundberg,
Ryan Finkelstein,
Taylor Blake Ward,
host of Locked On Yankees,
Locked On Mariners,
Locked On Mets,
Locked On Angels,
and you're listening to Locked On Braves.
Locked On Braves,
Locked On Braves,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your favorite teams every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Check out my bio there to see everywhere I am covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves in written form over at TomahawkTake.com. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe there as well. And thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. Right now, we're posting episodes 3 days a week during the lockout, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But once this stinking lockout finally ends, we'll get back to going to 5 days a week, giving you all the Braves content that you can handle. On today's podcast, we're going to be doing an interview with Rome Braves play-by-play voice Kevin Karel, talking about the Rome Braves prospects and some recent prospects who have come through the system. So really excited about this conversation with Kevin. So let me go ahead and bring Kevin in here. Kevin, thanks so much for joining the podcast here today.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate you having me and glad we were able to find a time to work it out.
Yeah, as always, trying to get interviews going. The hardest part is just figuring out a time that works for everybody. So I've been trying to set this up for a couple of weeks now. Glad we were able to do that. And like I said, Kevin, been a play-by-play guy with Rome. How many years have you been with Rome now, Kevin?
I started doing covering all the home games there as like a, you might say like a beat reporter in 2014, and then started doing all play-by-play radio and TV there, home and road in 2015. And then obviously this past year, there was things were a lot different because of COVID restriction and, inability to go in the clubhouse, couldn't go on the field, different protocols that were in place. And there was no, I think there was only one guy in our league that was doing road games last year, my friend Sean, and he was taking his own car, and there was a lot of moving parts to that. But long story short, I did not do road games this past year, but prior to that, I had done all the home and road stuff for them.
Yeah, that was something I was going to ask you is what was it like, during the pandemic, obviously there was no minor league season 2020 and this past year, but you were able for home games, you were able to be there and call those games at the stadium, right?
Yeah, it basically, it changed a lot. COVID definitely, changed minor league baseball really forever in a lot of ways, I think, because they were, and I don't know if it was realistic hopes or not, but when there was an actual minor league baseball organization, they thought they maybe had some leverage to negotiate keeping some teams, different things like that. But obviously the season got canceled, and then minor league baseball just completely went away, and it was taken in by Major League Baseball. A lot of teams got the axe there. What was it, 42 teams, I think, which were folded. And I'm glad a lot of those, cities and communities have been able to have some other form of baseball to keep it going. There was several teams in our old league, the South Atlantic League, that I thought were fun cities, good ballparks. Certainly would never say anything bad about any of them. And loved going to Lexington when we did. Always had fun in West Virginia. It was a pretty far drive, but enjoyed it. Hagerstown was kind of a unique thing, but I saw some of the best talent I'd ever seen in my life when we were in Hagerstown. It was not a new ballpark. It was not a fancy ballpark by any means, but saw Juan Soto play there in a couple of different seasons. Saw Victor Robles play there, and some great guys came through there. So there was good memories in all of those towns. And then COVID hits, so we're waiting for the season. Eventually it gets canceled. Luckily they at least had a major league, somewhat of a season that year with the 60 games. And last year wasn't really sure what was going to happen. This time last year, we were all kind of, waiting. And my situation is a little more unique than most minor league broadcasters. Most broadcasters work full time for the team. And I have been I work full time in radio was with a local group in Rome, now with a local group in Cartersville. And so I work for the Braves as what you would call like a contract seasonal employee. So for me, I'm doing my other work, just kind of waiting for them to tell me what's going to happen. And so they were, eventually they figure out we're going to have a major league season. So once the major league season gets established, then they can start focusing on the minor league season, and ended up having the start in May. And I don't know how familiar you are with the old leagues and stuff, but the South Atlantic League used to be very spread out. And, you might have 2 off days in a month. You could be home for a week and then go to, West Virginia for 4 days, and then come back to Rome, and then go to Charleston, South Carolina for 4 days. It was just all over the place with the scheduling. And that was, could be tough when you get home at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then you got a game that day at 6 or something. It could be tough. But say all of that to say that when they changed it, it was supposed to be an easier schedule for everyone involved, to make it less oppressive for the players, the staff. So now, instead of having that kind of unpredictable schedule where you never knew where you were going at what time, now it's pretty, I'd say, compared to the old way, this is fantastic. I mean, you're off every single Monday, so you're guaranteed an off day once a week, no matter what. No matter where you are, you're off on Mondays. That would have done a lot of guys a lot of good in the previous years when they were in the old system. Certainly, it would have been a heck of a lot better for the pitching staffs. I mean, you look back to 2017 and before that, there were no runner on second extra inning games. There were challenges and double headers. We used to play 17, 18, 19 inning games back then with 25 players on a roster and limited player movement. I mean, that was a lot tougher than what it is now. So now you've got Tuesday through Sunday. You go to one place for 6 days, which is also so much easier. And then last year, the way it started, they were on the road for the first 2 weeks. So I think they were gone for 16 days on that initial road trip. So we didn't have the home opener last year wasn't until I think May 18th, something like that. And it was a long wait to go from Labor Day of 2019 to May 18th of 2021. But it was very satisfying to be back there. And this will be the most normal season that the Miners has had in 3 years. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I'll say as a fan, I don't love the Monday off day every day, because that's also sometimes an off day for the major league team. And that's when I want to sit down and watch, minor league games, and don't have that availability. But it makes a lot of sense with what you're saying, and making it easier, on the players, on the staff as well. And Rome got moved up to, become a high A affiliate for the Braves as well, as part of those changes. And you got to see a lot of great prospects come through Rome last year. You had, Michael Harris and Jesse Franklin, who were there, all year. You had Spencer Strider, Jared Schuster, Bryce Elder, Vaughn Grissom, who came through as well. Who impressed you the most at Rome this year, and why?
I would say from a position player side, there was a lot of things to like with with Michael Harris. Obviously, he's very talented. One thing that I was waiting to see a little bit more from him was the power. Then he did not hit a home run at State Mutual Stadium last year. He had some home runs on the road. I think that's probably the last part of his game that will, explode. I mean, he's obviously got the power potential, the sweet left-handed swing. The thing about him that separates him from some of the recent guys who have come through there is, to me, he's more balanced than some of the other outfielders. He is above average to me with all five tools. You could see him playing an above average defense in center or in right. He's a guy that will hit for average. He was maybe a little jumpy the first month or so with the strikeout and walk rates, but that evened out over time as he just settled into it. And, he started just waiting for his pitch a little bit more, but he's obviously a top prospect now and is on all the new preseason, top 100 lists and all those things. He's quiet. He's kind of an unassuming guy, but he's very confident. And he was in Rome in 2019 when they were full season single A, one level below where Rome currently is. He came up after he had been drafted, I want to say maybe 6 weeks prior. And that team with the 19 Rome Braves team was really good and was competing for a playoff spot division title that year. That was also back when they split the minor league seasons into halves, as you recall. And they brought Mike up. He had been drafted out of the Atlanta area high school ranks and then was in Rome in full season ball in less than 2 months after being drafted. And that's very rare. He came up, and even then, the first thing I noticed then was how grounded he was and how focused he was on getting better every day. You see guys just have different personalities, but some guys, take practice, BP and things like that a little more seriously than others do. And he really takes his practice and his reps seriously. And his defense, even you weren't sure at that age how overpowered he may or may not be against what at that time in the South Atlantic League, your pitchers are going to be 22, 23 years old, guys who pitched primarily coming out of college. And he had just graduated from high school. So the bat was maybe not there right away, facing guys 5 and 6 years older than he was. But his defense was fantastic. He's got a great arm. That's something that I think Braves fans will see as he rises, is how good of an arm he has as a left-hander. He was gunning guys out. I remember being in Greensboro after he came up, and he made an outstanding sliding catch in the bullpen, the visitors' bullpen in foul territory, got up and then threw a rocket to third base from foul ground in right field. And he was just 18 at that time. And I was like, this kid is, going to be special. And I've seen a lot of great outfielders come through Rome in the time that I've been there. Ronald Acuna Jr. was there. He was the center fielder when he was there. Drew Waters, Christian Pache, Mike, and Jesse Franklin played some center field too. Had some Justin Dean was a phenomenal center fielder in Rome. So, I mean, there's been a lot of really good defensive outfielders. The only one that I would say would be on a level above Mike would be Pache, but that's not taking anything away from anyone else. Pache is the best defensive center fielder in the minor leagues I've ever seen. And that's his carrying tool for sure. But Mike can do it all. And that's
what I've heard a lot about Michael Harris is that, everybody, obviously talks about the bat, but what I've heard from multiple people now, including yourself, is that his defense is right there. And, maybe not better than Pache's. You said Pache is the best in all of minor league, but, certainly just right below him. So that's great as well. I did just want to quickly ask you mentioned the power. He didn't hit a home run there in Rome. I've been to that ballpark once, but I don't remember. Is that more of a pitcher friendly park? Is there a reason why the power?
It was modeled after the old Turner Field, because when they built Rome in 01-02 era, they modeled it after same dimensions as Turner Field, and was particularly difficult on left-handed power hitters, which is part of what made Jesse Franklin's season this past year so incredible. Very rare to see big power to center and right center for left-handed hitters in that ballpark, and Franklin could do it, and to have that much pull power and power alley dead center power in that park is rare. And Jesse Franklin had that this past year. That's probably what will stick out to me the most from his time in Rome was tremendous left-handed power for him. And that's another guy where you are wondering if, when the light would turn on for him, because he was a little slow out of the gate, but then he went on a tear, was player of the month. I thought for a while he was going to be have a 30-30 season. And he's certainly capable of that as he rises. The only thing you have to watch with him is make sure the swing doesn't get too big and watch the strikeouts. But he's very special too. And the Braves were extremely aggressive with promoting guys from Rome last year, especially the pitchers, which, one after another, the rotation was completely gone by like June. It was a remodeled pitching staff. Had Tarnok come up, and then Freddie moved up quick. But Franklin, and on the position player side, they did a lot of promoting as well. Not quite as extreme as it was on the pitching side, but with Harris and Franklin, and people kept saying, when are they going to promote these guys? When are they going to promote them? And they were very deliberate in wanting them to have that full season experience in Rome, which they did for a lot of guys in the past. This isn't the same player development group as it was years ago, but that wasn't an unheard of thing. Acuna did that. Ozzie did that. Pache did that, where they wanted a guy to go opening day to end of season, just being in Rome and trying to work on different things, becoming a more complete player. And Rome is a good place and has been a good place for guys to get acclimated to pro ball. For most of its existence, it was the first full season team in the organization. And Atlanta Braves never had, in the old minor league structure, they did not have a short season high A, club, essentially a New York Penn or a Northwest League team. They went straight from GCL, then rookie ball, and then in Danville, and then all the way up. So they would pull GCL and Danville straight to, all the way up to full season, which was a big jump. That's missing a step. And so having guys get that full experience, and in some cases, guys being in America for an extended period for the first time that they ever done it. I remember being in Asheville in 2018. It was the first road trip of the year. And we played the first game of that series in a snowstorm, and Asheville was like, look, we've already had to cancel our opening day this week. The weather's been terrible. We're playing this game tonight. And everybody's like, okay. And so we played in snow. Kyle Muller started that game, by the way. Wow. And I mean, it was so interesting, first of all, to play a game in snow, but that team had a lot of players from Latin America. And I remember the guys coming out of the clubhouse in pregame when it started to snow, and most of them had never seen snow before their entire lives. Wow. And I remember them just walking around, like little kids walking around on the field, trying to catch the snow. So, I mean, there's the player development part, and there's also the, guys just need time to kind of mature off the field and learn things about themselves too. And that's part of the minor league experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. All right. I want to take a quick break and then come back and talk about some more Braves prospects. Before we do that, let me tell you about Built Bar. And this is the time of the year where I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not a resolution at all because I actually enjoy eating them. And have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. In fact, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart to be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carbs. Most Built bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozen of net carbs. And there's all kinds of great flavors at Built Bar. You got mint brownie, coconut almond, and right now they have the white chocolate cookies and cream. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, Kevin. So another player, he was only there for 3 starts, but he's starting to become one of my favorite Braves prospects, and that is Spencer Strider, who, crossed several levels, played 5 different levels of baseball last year. 2 of his starts were at home, so hopefully you did get to watch those games closely. But just give me your thoughts on Spencer Strider and what his ceiling could be, because I'm very high on him, whether he becomes, a frontline starter, or I think he could be a dominant, back of the game bullpen type arm.
Yeah, his time in Rome, as you mentioned, it was brief, but it was very strong. He threw hard, was consistently, velo was up there, mid and upper 90s when he was there. They were a little bit more probably guarded with velocity readings this year than in past years, but for all pitchers, not just him, but the you could get the readings and see that he was throwing hard, ball had a lot of movement to it. I'm not a scout, but he was fantastic in the time that he was there, and was easy to see. He was a tremendous competitor, very intense on the mound, kind of demonstrative, which some people don't like that. I love it personally. I like the Max Scherzer style psycho on the mound. That's always fun to watch. Yeah. And, he just had a lot of personality when he pitched, and liked that about him. They kept him in Augusta pretty long time last year, and then promoted him, obviously, got through the entire system and into the big leagues quickly. Was an older pitcher, a college draftee, and a guy that had lost some minor league development time because of the 2020, the COVID pandemic. But he was very impressive when he was in Rome. I wish I would have gotten to interview him, but that was, of course, no dugout, no field, no clubhouse policy for media last year. So I didn't get a chance to visit with him, but really enjoyed watching him pitch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love to just get that added insight. When you talk about kind of that Max Scherzer bulldog mentality, that's kind of what I see from him as well, and I absolutely love that. And I know you can't put that really in a scouting report or in a metric, but I love pitchers who have that type of mentality, and I think Strider does. All right, just moving, not necessarily prospects in the system now, but who are some of your favorite Braves prospects that you've seen come through Rome over your 6-7 years there?
Well, a lot of great players, and a lot of great people that I had the pleasure to meet and work with too. Among my favorites would certainly be Ozzy, guy that you just knew when you met him that he was going to be a big leaguer. Knew it right away. And people don't realize, or maybe they do, they see him on TV, but he is very small. Like, he is one of the smallest players I've ever seen in pro baseball, but he's very strong, and he's well built, and he works, harder than anybody. And he just had some guys just have that quality that that you wouldn't worry about him making the right decisions. You wouldn't worry about him getting distracted by something. He was a guy that was going to be, in his mind, a major league starting position player, and nothing was going to be able to derail him from doing that. And he was on a Rome team in 2015 that wasn't very good. That was when the teardown had just started under Capalella and John Hart, and guys were starting to rebuild the system. And Ozzy, honestly, was pretty underrated at that time. He was considered a prospect, but he was listed. If you go back and look at some of those Baseball America lists from that time, he was not really considered the way that he should have been. The one guy that was on him big time as a scout was Bill Ballou, who was written for Baseball America for years. Bill was all over it. And we went to Asheville a lot that season, where he was works for the Tourists a little bit. And at that time, I'm not sure if he still is, but Bill is a great guy, and his Braves scouting roots go back a long ways. And he said, people don't get it with this kid. He's the number one prospect in the system.
Wow.
People are talking about these other players. They don't get it. And he was right 100% that Ozzie was. Of course, also at that time, people didn't know that Ronald Acuna Jr. was what he was going to be either. And he was even less of a prospect the next year, as Ozzie had been in 15, contrary to what some people think. They did not play together in Rome. Ozzie was 15, Ronnie was 16, and he was hurt for about half that year. He had a thumb issue, and he on a headfirst slide into second base, which is still to this day when I watch the Braves play and he slides head first, I have a little, just worried that he's gonna get his thumb or his hand stepped on or something, because he plays so hard. But that was they had the same pretty similar experiences, went through the full, as 18-year-olds, and those probably the two most naturally gifted position players that had come through for pitchers and people, and just guys that were just great to be around. I'd have Mike Soroka high on any list. Mike is a wonderful person, has a great family. He was the best pitcher in that league when he was 18. He and probably Patrick Weigel were at the top of that rotation most of that regular season. That rotation also had Touki Toussaint, and Colby Allard was on that team. Ricardo Sanchez, who ended up making it into the major leagues. A lot of great pitchers. And of course, the guy who has become the most heralded as a big leaguer is Max Fried. Max was on that team. Another guy who's a lot of fun to be around. And Max was on the mound for all of the clinching games in the playoff run for Rome that year. He pitched all the division title, each round of the playoffs. He was the starting pitcher, the winning pitcher. And then, of course, he was just the winning pitcher in the clinching game of the World Series. So he's got a knack for it. And those would be all the pitchers in that rotation that year were great. The following year, for your pure entertainment value, watching Christian Pache shag fly balls during batting practice, I would pay money to see that on a regular basis. He just glided out there. Really fun guy to be around. And that team's rotation was loaded. I think looking back on it, just very fortunate to have come into the Braves organization at the time I did, to have been with the organization coming in at the time that I did, at the start of the minor league system really beginning to shine, eventually becoming the number one system in baseball, and watching a lot of the guys that won a championship in Rome just win a championship in Atlanta. A lot of those same players, and just having great relationships and experiences with those guys when they were in Rome. It's really great people too. And, guys that were just easy to interview, guys that were easy to be around, guys who worked hard, who did things, in the community while they were in Rome, and just were wonderful to have as Rome Braves, and a good reflection of the kind of those kind of players make a clubhouse great and are part of how you win a championship. Austin Riley, Max Fried, Acuna, Touki, all those guys from 16 were special. And the next year with Ian Anderson, Tucker Davidson, Joey Wentz, Bryce Wilson, that rotation was loaded. Jeremy Walker was on that team that year. He made it into the big leagues for a little bit. The following year, even the next wave of guys, they didn't get as much press clippings, but most of that 2018 rotation eventually made it to the major leagues too, with Kyle Muller and Waskari Noah, who was kind of coming into his own at that time. And he did not fare too well at the beginning when he was there. And they got him straightened out, and he worked harder, and he figured it out and made himself a big league pitcher. Bruce Zimmerman was on that team. He's been a starter for the Orioles. He was in the Gaussman deal a few years ago. So, I mean, there has just been a tremendous amount of talent that I saw come through Rome, coming in when I did. And, even through to today, there's just been a lot of great prospects. And I've been very fortunate. If it was the previous, 6 or 7 years, wouldn't have been nearly as many major league guys. And you're talking about impact players, maybe even a Hall of Famer or two, in that group. It's certainly possible. That 2016 team, Jake, just that team alone, I think has had 13 now major leaguer. Maybe it might be 14. I'm going to have to go check again. But that team alone, more than a dozen, because I know Juan Yepes was on the postseason roster in the wild card game, and he was a guy that played on that 16 team. He's still doing so. When he made it this past October, that was yet another guy from the 2016 Rome Braves, who was traded the next year, way back, 5 years ago, in the Matt Adams deal, which seems like forever ago. So, I mean, there's still guys from back then that were really young who are even in the minor leagues from that club. So the Braves put together a tremendous amount of talent, and I've been really fortunate to be around to see a lot of it come through.
Yeah, like you said, been a great time to work in the Braves minor league system with all the talent they've had come through. That's now, turned into a World Series championship for sure. And we talked about a lot of starting pitchers. That's really what they focused on in the rebuild. And even now, the ones that came through last year, they just continue to develop pitching at that level. Next, I wanted to just ask you about the state of minor league baseball in general. Get your thoughts on that. Before we do that, let me tell you about Bet Online. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full swing for both pro and college hoops. From the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. So, like I said, I mainly just wanted to end here kind of getting your thought on minor league baseball as a whole. We talked about the changes that were made, in 2020. There's obviously a lot of discussion going on right now with how minor league players are paid. And look, I worked in rookie level ball. I've seen, how little those players make, and, a bunch of them just sleeping in the same hotel room. So I see what that looks like. I've, experienced it firsthand, and that's a very, hot topic item right now. But overall, I mean, do you feel that the minor league game is in a good place? I certainly do. I think there's so much coverage now, with MILB.TV. There's so many, fans, or, just casual fans even now, who seem to be more invested in minor league players and prospects. And that information just seems so much more easier to gather now, which I think, makes it a more immersive sport, because the one thing that baseball struggles with that other sports don't is that when a baseball player gets drafted, you don't see them for 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't really get to become household names. But that seems to have changed a little bit now with how much focus there is on prospects in the game, that I think has elevated the minor league game itself. But I want to get your thoughts where you feel like the minor league game is, where it could grow, where it's failing or falling short right now.
Well, I think it's a wonderful time to be interested in the minor leagues, or to work in the minor leagues, follow it, any of those things. For the fans, I think it's a wonderful time. The internet's the best thing that ever happened to the minors. You've got, when I was growing up, I don't know how you would have even accessed minor league information or box scores, other than maybe if you opened a newspaper, opening up a Sunday paper, you might get a blurb or something if you're following, in the 90s, you say, oh, Andrew Jones hit 4 home runs and for Richmond this week, and you wouldn't. How would you know that until you saw it in a newspaper? But now you can follow the box scores of every game for the full season teams. Most of them have TV, and we have one of the larger followings of minor league baseball television in Rome. They've had a very that's something that's been heavily viewed over the years, and certainly having all the prospects helps. That's not regular television. But it is high def internet television, and it's awesome. And folks can see it. And I mean, even think about for the parents. I mean, we have people watching in Latin America, or watching. We had a pitcher who was from Australia. They could watch their son play, halfway around the world. Stuff like that is just amazing. And to have all the Braves great websites that cover the team and cover the minor leagues, and yours and Tomahawk Take and Talking Chop, and all of the people that are dedicated to the minor leagues. And I've met a lot of those guys like yourself through the years, and you guys are dedicated to it and cover it. So I mean, I think if you want to say I'm a Braves fan and I want to follow the minor leagues, you've got a lot of wonderful options out there, people that really care about it. And that's a totally different experience than, like, for example, I'm 38. There was nothing like that when I was growing up. That's a totally different experience now, and I think it's great. The more exposure, the better for these minor league players. The best thing for the players in the new deal is that you can't have really substandard facilities anymore. You can't have substandard meals. There was a time in the old league, like, where guys just on visiting teams loved coming to Rome because the ballpark was nice, the facilities were good, and it was light years ahead of some of the other affiliates in the league. Augusta's new ballpark is awesome. Augusta's old ballpark was not awesome. I can tell you that for a fact. And I still liked going there, but I mean, it was, not having air conditioning in a clubhouse in Augusta in July and August, not a super comfortable thing. And so that kind of stuff, that's a big change. The Braves were on the cutting edge of that, of having their players having better, just better food, better nutrition, better training, some of that type of stuff, just taking better care of their players. I do agree with wanting the players to have better pay. And there are always a handful of guys who are high draft picks who, they don't need the extra 500 or whatever a week, but a lot of the other guys do. The majority of the players, that would really mean a lot to them, helping them with their housing, all of those things. So I would love to see that. That's something that I hope is going to be addressed in the CBA. I think it's going to be wonderful for the minor leagues moving forward. It is going to be different, probably in some ways, for the Braves affiliates not being owned by the big league club anymore. I think that probably more impact the people that impacts the most, I think, are probably the people who work full time for the Braves on those affiliates. Those people are not, quote unquote, Atlanta Braves employees anymore per se. They're working for someone else. I don't think it'll change much for the players, the coaches, the staff, and all of that. Those guys they come in for the season, they leave. The full-time people live there, they work there, all of those things. So I think for some of those people, it'll be a different experience. If there was anything that I would miss from the old system, would probably just be, that league was fun, the way it was structured. The new league is good too. It was just, there were, some aspects of that were unique. Rome's old division, you really didn't play the teams in the other division all that much. You'd have a crossover couple of weeks where you might go to New Jersey and Maryland, but for the most part, you played your divisional teams about 2/3 or more of the time. Rome's old division was so awesome. It was Asheville and Charleston, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Columbia and that new ballpark, Asheville, which is great, Lexington, Kentucky, which was, I think, the biggest city in the old league. That was a pretty big town. I was surprised they lost their team there. And then Augusta, which was both the old ballpark and the new ballpark. Either way, I enjoyed going there, but the new ballpark was definitely a huge addition, and that's also, of course, now in the Braves system too. So that division was just awesome, and those teams played so much, and you got to know, meet a lot of people in all of those cities, and the staffers and friends and broadcast friends and all of those things. So that was a really fun time. And most of those places weren't hard to travel to either from Rome, maybe 4 hours or less for a lot of those. So it wasn't too bad. And I'll always enjoy those memories. But the new league also good. So I don't want it to seem like I'm downgrading the new league, but the old division and the old league was pretty great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great. I'd love to get that insight from the minor league perspective. I think the minor leagues are so fascinating. Like I said, I worked in minor league baseball for a little while as well, and I just love the minor league atmosphere. I live in Birmingham, so I have the Barons here, and I go to a lot of their games, and just love the minor league game. And you just get for me to know those players at such a more human level, down to earth level at those minor league stadiums and games. So appreciate you providing your insight on that, and appreciate you so much for joining the show. If you aren't already, make sure that you follow Kevin on Twitter as well, and make sure that you listen to him as part of the Rome Braves broadcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Kevin Karel 21. That's Kevin Karel 21 on Twitter. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.